Hey guys, in this Red Gaming Tech video I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be talking about MSConfig as well as a few other little tools just to give you guys a little idea of how to remove viruses and just to improve your general system stability slash performance. Now, most of you who are familiar with PC Game are probably aware of these tools already. However, some of you probably are not, and there is obviously always good to improve people's knowledge in general. This particular method is good, for example, if you don't have access to a secondary computer for network access, and for example you need to quickly remove a slightly malicious virus. Ransom viruses are very good for this. For example, they'll tell you that your PC is running counterfeit software, and it probably isn't, and they'll ransom you a certain amount of money. I've come across this a couple of times. Now people are going to scream that you just need good security. That's true, but for example, it's always possible that you can run into this on a reasonably freshly formatted system, and so on. Besides, for all you know, it could be your friend. So I'm just going to quickly go into this. Generally speaking, you're going to want to run this under, if it's a virus or you want to check for suspicious things running in the background, you're probably going to want to do this in safe mode. I obviously can't. However, regardless of the fact, even if you just want to see what's loading in the background, just for system performance reasons, you feel like too much CPU is running, it's a pretty good little tool to know about anyway, as you can access a few little tweaks. So anyway, with that said, we can do this a couple of ways. You can either press Windows R and then type in MSConfig, or you can just type it into the start menu. It's up to you. I'll just do it this way just for the visual aspect more than anything. And then obviously it's going to pop up with this. It may or may not ask you for a sorry guys, just struggling to get into the record window there. Anyway, as I was saying, it may or may not ask you for admin prompt, depending. Anyway, once you're in here, you've got various options, including normal startup, diagnostic startup, selective startup. Fairly obvious, that one. Basic services are very good if you're very worried. It's almost like booting in safe mode, although you have a few more bits and pieces on there. You've got boot. This is pretty good if you've got multiple operating systems, as you can reduce the timeout between the loads. I don't know if you guys have ever had multiple OSs installed, but generally there's a time limit between where you can actually choose. For example, let's say that Windows 7 is what you really want to load 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, but you have a Windows, say, XP partition, and you're just running that just for the old games, because they generally play better on older operating systems. So what you might want to do is have that older OS on like a very low timeout, with the default to be Windows 7. So if you're standing there, reboot your machine, and you're like, hey, you know what, I just want to quickly go into Windows XP, you can just press down and press enter, but it's only lasts for a few seconds. So if you do happen to switch your PC off and it won't, and then restart and you walk away, it won't take forever and a day to boot. You can also go safe boot, where you can choose these different options, which is good if you've got different operating systems which are running into particular issues. I'm not going to go into all this though. You've also got services. This is pretty simple stuff. This allows you to basically stop a service at the start. I'm going to go into this a little bit more in detail, maybe in this video, or possibly into a different one, depending on how long this is. I don't want to keep these videos too long, as I don't want to kind of bore the tears off you. However, your services will look a little bit different. Generally speaking, you can actually just go ahead and well, Google, if you're not sure. If you have a smartphone, even if you can't access the internet on your PC, of course that gives you the option. For example, Steam loads in the background. If you don't want that, you could switch it off. Although most of these things do happen to have their own. For example, Steam, you can tell them not to load in the background if you choose. You can also hide all the Microsoft services. So that's pretty cool. But for this case, we're not going to bother to do that. Under tools, you've got various little bits and pieces, including computer management. That's good, for example, for hard disks, that kind of thing. You can choose partitions, and you've also got task manager. I'll probably go into actual task manager and that kind of thing in another video as well. And we've also got startup, which is actually the primary reason we're actually looking at this video. startup is pretty simple. It's applications that load in the background of your PC. As you can see, there are a ton of stuff. You can choose between them quite easily. Sorry guys, there is construction going outside my house. I'm unable to control that. So it's going to be a little bit noisy, unfortunately, for this video. I really apologise in advance if it bothered you. Anyway, you can basically choose between different things and simply untick them. This is very good because, as I've said, some viruses do load. So let's say, for example, it was Steam in this case, and Steam was a virus, even though obviously it's not. I just want to clarify that. Let's assume it was a virus. Then I could just untick that in safe mode and it would not load back in regular mode. This is pretty cool because in safe boot, generally, most of the stuff and most of the services and so on do not load. Now you can choose between, for example, having networking if you boot in safe mode, but sometimes you don't want to do that for the simple reason that safe mode with networking can run you into a few problems. I'm just adjusting the recording window a little bit there as it's just annoying me more than anything else. So with that said, you can basically quickly go in here and do this. Now there are other tools that can really help you with this, and I will be going through them. Now I know a lot of you are probably going to say this is very different from most of the videos that I've got on RGT. To be honest with you, I'm not completely aware of that. But RGT was actually started as a tech and gaming website, hence Red Gaming Tech. The tech obviously will always be secondary to the gaming aspect, and generally speaking I want the gaming to revolve around, should I say the technology to revolve around the gaming. But in cases like this, where it's like antivirus and basic system maintenance, I quite like putting in a little video in sometimes, just to give you guys a little bit of a break from gaming. I know some of you probably don't want that, but anyway. And also it just gives a little bit of extra knowledge, plus as well maybe it will get a few extra people to view the channel, you never know, which would of course always be a good thing. Regardless of the fact, once you've done this, you just reboot and it will go ahead and do that. It's also a pretty good practice if you just want a little bit of advice. It's also always a good idea to have a secondary administrative account, or at the very least a basic user level account on your system, for the simple reason that if one of your accounts become compromised, you do actually have access to a secondary account, which is always actually a really positive thing. For example, let's assume that, you know, account A becomes compromised with a certain thing and you can't boot into it, so you can't even access MSConfig. Even bootloaders, I've actually had this a few times where you can't even safe boot into that particular user. Then it's actually pretty cool to actually have a secondary account. I know some people probably don't want that, and having more than one admin account can be a bit difficult. What you could do is have that secondary admin account on a ridiculously complicated password if it's only, for example, your PC. Other than that, another good practice that a lot of people do is to actually have a secondary account for themselves. So they'll have account A, which is admin, and account B, which is secondary, and they'll browse and, you know, Facebook or whatever they want to do on account B. So if, for example, one of their friends on Facebook's PC is infected and they happen to click on a link, either in chat or on their actual, you know, wall or what have you, and it have to take them to something that's going to exploit their PC, it won't really affect it, because that PC doesn't have permissions on that account to run anything particularly dangerous. Anyway, this has been a very brief overview. I will be going into some really cool applications actually, which are going to be very much about diagnostic startups. I'm going to be talking, hopefully not too distant future, about diagnosing RAM. If your RAM, for example, you feel that's bad, I'll be going into core temperature, showing you how to monitor that, as well as the graphics card temperatures. I'll be going and showing you a few browser speed up tips, although they're somewhat less relevant than they were, because obviously browsers now are so fast and your internet's so fast, but it doesn't really hurt. I'll be showing you a few good add-ons as well. And on top of that, of course, we're going to have all the gaming stuff that we've normally had, so don't worry, we're not stopping that at all. I know Amata has a lot of StarCraft planned, and some gaming news. Website is almost done, and so on. We're going to be adding some more sections to that as well, and also hopefully there'll be some really good news coming up in the next week to 2 weeks, depending how long things take to percolate, if you will. Anyway, I think that's just about covered everything that I need to. So with that said, take care of yourselves guys, and hope you found the video a little bit helpful. Once again, this is a very brief tour. I will be putting out some more complicated in-depth videos on each of the subjects pretty soon. So bye for now.